decent picture.
Yeah, well, I tried to find one that was not so flattering, but I do try to be nice. I mean, I don't have, a lot of people say I don't. But anyway, so one of the things that's been that always happens right after the session is everybody is endorsing everyone. And there have been some very, very, very interesting endorsements in the governor's race. It would seem that everybody has forgotten how unconservative Megan Degenfelder actually is.
Yeah.
And, I challenge anybody to tell me one conservative thing that she's got accomplished. Now, perhaps you could say, well, she went and, went to D.C. and, met with Trump. Well, okay, great. But what did we actually get accomplished? I mean, what's the pedigree there? What's the resume look like? Well, there isn't one. And in fact, I think if you look at the fundraising from Megan Degenfelder, she's not getting money from conservative folks. I think if you look at the endorsements, those are interesting. Deemer True, Eli Bebout, well, those are not people that I would want on my side. And then there's some conservatives.
If Deemer True endorsed me, or he was endorsing the same candidate as myself, I think I would have to go back and re-examine what I'm looking at.
Yeah, but the truth is, in the governor's race, we have Eric Barlow, who spent 85% of his time voting with Democrats in his entire legislative career. You've got Megan Degenfelder, who she's not a conservative, and I think you can go listen to the interview that I did with her. She didn't really answer any of the questions. Megan, if you're listening, you're welcome back on the program to clear all that up. But right now, I don't really see a whole lot of conservatism coming from your direction.
Look at the slip board votes.
Yeah, the slip board votes almost right in line with Governor Gordon.
Yep.
And, in that case, there's only one conservative out of our top 5 legislators who really, talked the talk and walked the walk.
Oh, Chuck, I am, by the way, I think that's getting announced today, too, that I am endorsing Chuck Gray.
Okay.
For Congress.
Excellent.
And there will probably be a meme, if it isn't already, be a meme up with a bad picture of me. There are very few good pictures, but
now there is another guy in the governor's race, and that's Brent Bean.
Yes.
And now Brent he's in my mind, he's the only conservative in the race right now.
So, if I may, because I've known Brent for quite a while. I remember when he first started speaking up several years ago, about 6-7 years ago, at Sheridan County GOP events. It was a little hard to listen to because he wasn't really a very polished speaker, and he's been doing a lot of work. And
he's
I appreciate that.
Place.
He's going all over the state. He's out there day after day after day, beating the weeds, doing the job. He led the Citizens Initiative along with Cheryl Aguiar, and hi Cheryl, and some others out there that I know worked very hard, not just to get things done for Wyoming because they felt like the legislature was failing, but to go out and stay in front of the people and keep the, build the name recognition, build that trust. And I would be remiss if I didn't admit that there aren't some issues in my mind with Brent and how he does things. He's kind of a maverick. He doesn't necessarily listen to what conventional wisdom is or what everybody else says. But when I look at that, I think, those weaknesses are actually his strength. We need somebody who has a solid titanium backbone, who knows exactly what he believes and why. And no, I'm not describing myself this time, although I am.
Right.
But of course.
Well, of course you are.
But of course I am. No, but seriously, he's not going to be swayed by what a bunch of people say or try to turn him. And so he has my full endorsement.
Excellent.
I've known him for several years. He could be frustrating, but man, that's what we need, because anything less will get run over. And if you put Megan up there, and Megan, I love you, but you wouldn't stand up to the slip board. You're not going to stand up to what we need there. When we send over an initiative that says we want to cut 15% out of our next budget, and don't go print that and say this is what our
That's
goal
going to be
is.
on the open range
I
record
know,
later.
Right,
I know.
Yeah.
But let's say
says.
we did that, and we actually, because we have to cut, and I don't want to get into the red jackets now, but we have to do some cutting. And when we send it to Megan, it's not going to happen. We
No,
send it to Barlow, he's going to veto everything, and we're going to be scrapping.
he'll do the same
The
thing he
only
did
person
in the
that will
House.
say, "Yeah, I'll see your 15 and raise you 5%." That's what we need.
Well, speaking of him, let's talk to him.
Oh no.
Oh no! Welcome to the program, Mr. Brent Bean. How are you? Uh-oh. Here we go. All right, Brent, how are you this morning?
Good, Dave. How are you doing?
I'm all right, man. Where are you at right now?
Good. I'm down in Casper. Down in Casper here with Gary and Max Jacobson down here. We're sitting here just ready to do a tour around the town in honor of her mom's birthday and of course St. Patty's Day.
All right, great. Well, I
That's what we're doing.
assume that you heard Agent 29, Representative Ken Pendergraft, endorse you.
I did. Agent 29. Yeah.
Hey, it's, with any luck at all,
Ken's the man.
with any luck at all, I'll get to be Agent 21.
Yeah.
There's a new Agent 29 in the wings.
All right, Brent. So, talk to me. We just finished the legislative session. What do you think? What changes
Yeah.
do you want to see happen? Just talk to us.
Well, I tell you what. Overall, quite frankly, I'm not too thrilled. I think when it came down to taxes, when it came down to elections, a lot more work needs to be done. I was particularly not happy with Senate File. I think it was 116 that addressed the storm runoff taxes that are down in Laramie and in Cheyenne. And by statute, anytime a municipality, as you guys know, wants to impose, they call it a fee, but it's really a tax.
Right. All fees are
A
taxes.
fee on the folks. It has to go. That's right. That's right. It has to go before a vote. And of course, these were implemented in Laramie and Cheyenne without going to a vote. So that bill, I think it was Senator Crum that put out there, even though it's by statute, they're supposed to do this by statute. It was basically going to be one of those things that would make it mandatory across the state. And there was actually a grandfather clause in there for any other municipality around the state that's already implemented something like that. That once the debt's paid off, then they had to go back, before the folks for an election. And we saw this, made it through the third reading, good to go, and then it was reconsidered, and then it was voted down. The whole thing on that is we're starting to see government, and not starting, it's been going on, but we're really seeing all these taxes, everything is about trying to squeeze more and more money out of the taxpayer. And so again, that was just one of them, just simply because it is voter suppression. And but again, this needs to be held at the municipality level, and these municipality leaders, whether they're city council members, mayors, or whatever they are, if they're not adhering to statute, then of course, they need to be fired all the way across the board. And this is all across the state, and this kind of stuff that's going on. If they're not upholding and standing up for the taxpayer, then they need to be voted out next, in 2026. And in elections, that to me is one of the my most paramount issues there, and just visibility in elections. And really, we really haven't audited any of our elections. I mean, the full-blown audit since we've been a state.
Hold on a minute.
And
They did pass a hand count bill. I mean, it's not to the extent that I would go to, but what do you think of that one?
Right. Well, it's getting there. It's starting to get there. Here's as I've been traveling all over the state the last couple of years talking elections, and there's two paths here, right? There's voter integrity, and which the Secretary of State has been really staunch on, and then there's election integrity, and I kind of equate it to a rudimentary parallel here to our immigration system, right? So we can get rid of all the illegals, but if we don't fix the immigration system, they're just going to come back, and that's very similar, I think, in a way, to elections. We can get voter ID, we can get all this stuff done, but if we don't fix the elections process, we're still going to have problems. And they're complementary efforts here. Don't get me wrong here. I think what's gone on with voter integrity, I think, is good, but I think it lacks where we lack here is in election integrity and being able to, no kidding, do the full blown audit. And at least have the ability to audit up to 100% as we need to. And I do believe, as I travel around the state, the one thing I've seen is that, unfortunately, I didn't keep statistics with this, but the number one reason, the presiding reason that folks who used to vote no longer vote is because they don't trust the system or the machines. And those who still do vote, they do it out of their patriotic duty, but they don't trust the machines. That's what they call them, the machines. And we're talking, ES&S, the system that we use right now. And between ES&S and Dominion, that accounts for over 80% of the cast paper ballots, of the tabulation of those cast paper ballots. And we know that they're corruptible. We know that. We don't know if that's happening here simply because, we can't get through the logic and accuracy tests to test them. We have serialization problems. And because we don't audit, we don't know if the output is actually matching the input. And we always hear the argument that, every vote has to count. And that's true. But, I take it one step further, that every vote needs to count for the intended recipient. And that's what we're really looking for here.
Well, let me,
and ultimately,
not to interrupt you, but so
Sure.
Wyoming has a law that we have to use machines. So
That's right.
And I'm just playing devil's advocate with you here. But wouldn't the first step be to get changes made at the legislature before we do anything else? Because if you have to use the machines, then the argument of whether or not the machines work is kind of secondary. So wouldn't we want to start at the legislature?
Well, absolutely, and of course the people never had any say in bringing these machines in. This all stemmed, as you know, from the 2000 election, Help America Vote Act, which came in shortly after that, and all the way through. And of course, we never had any say in these new the systems we're using right now. So of course, it all has to happen legislatively. We need to change the laws, and that's why I've been part of and helped draft multiple bills to do this, going down, to target how we do this. And of course, what we have, I think, is the parochialism that we have, this incrementalism that we have in our legislature that's being predominantly run by the rhinos on the left, is that, we can't do this anymore. We got to go in and make these major muscle movement or stock market correction changes in our laws to make this work. But you're absolutely right. We need to change the laws. And we know definitively, though, once we got all the data last May, a year ago May, after the 2024 election, that we found that not a single county prior to the primary passed the logic and accuracy test of the ES&S system. But that the primary is still certified.
Okay, hold on, Brent. I just so happens I have a guy here that knows a little bit about this. I don't know if you've met him, but James Temple he was the election supervisor in Sheridan. He's got a question for you.
Yeah, so
Sure.
I just want to be careful there, Brent, and let me first say I appreciate you. I really appreciate the efforts you're putting into your race. I voted for you in 2022, by the way, and the way things
thanks.
are going right now, I'm planning on doing that again here in 26. However, when it comes to the logic and accuracy test with the machines in Sheridan County, what initially happened, and it happened statewide. And you can actually ask Secretary Gray about this. He and I have a very good relationship. The initial test, what had happened is in statute, there's a gray area that determines as long as the results match what the test deck is, and of course there's tons of controls, then you're good to go. Well, Secretary Gray, in reading statute, said, well, I do not want a test deck to show identical number of votes for two different candidates, because then how do we know if the machine is picking Mark Jennings versus Barry Crago if each of them have one vote on a ballot in the test deck? And we don't, because it's just telling us the number of votes. So then what Secretary Gray did was he came out and said, I want anybody that has any duplicate results to please run a different test with a new test deck. Well, I only had one race that did that, and it did. It happened to be the Jennings-Crago race. And because of that, I automatically contacted ES&S. We had a brand new test deck generated in order to not have any duplicate number of votes for candidates. So every candidate countywide would receive a different number of votes, so we knew exactly what the machine was doing. And when we ran that second test, the first test, I had roughly 500 ballots in a test deck to run through all the machines. The second one, because we had to account for one race, actually changed my number to 1,260 ballots to run a test deck in that. So there was a lot of effort into it. And the second time we ran it, which was literally the Saturday before the primary, the machines did pass, all 29 of them passed with flying colors. So I understand what you're saying, and I'm not necessarily pro machine or pro can count either one. But in this argument, when we're talking about these things, I want to make sure that the clerks that did retest and got the right results as a result of Secretary Gray's request get credit for that, because I know that my test passed. And I also know that it then passed again for the general election. I do know there were a couple of counties that actually refused to do it. And in my mind, that's
Right.
just ludicrous. If your Secretary of State, who's the chief election official for the state, asks you to do it, then do it. But I just want to make sure that we're getting the whole truth out there with that. And I know that you not being inside of the elections portal kind of puts you at a disadvantage. However, I am here anytime you want to ask me something to just get the objective answer or to get some insight on it. I would be glad to assist you in any way, Brent.
Well, I think you're right, though, Brent.
No, absolutely.
That we have.
Yeah. Well, if I can just
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I can comment on that, but what is they're supposed to pass within a certain time prior to the election, right? It's the 13 or 14 or whatever it is, and I don't have the statute sitting in front of me, prior to the election. And that's where I'm going with this, because if there is an issue, and none of us are gunning for the clerks. It's the way everything's set up right now that really, I mean, the clerks have to be an absolute expert in ES&S and how to test these things and everything else. We've never been gunning for the clerks. Our whole thing is we want to make it's the government's job to gain or regain the trust of the citizenry, not the other way around. And what I've seen, again, being all over this state in every single county, teaching folks on hand count. Of course, it's one thing to identify a problem and frame the problem, and because that's the only way you can solve it. And the other is to, the complement to that is to provide a solution. And of course, that's what we've done. We've trained, I don't know how many people around the state on a particular method to hand count. And once they're done, and these are typically 3-hour sessions that we've been doing all over the state. I haven't done them here over I think we stopped doing this probably, or I did anyway, in November, just simply because I was gearing up for this campaign again. But that is, there is a trust level thing here, but we've gone through the statute. I look at Title 22, and between Title 39, which is our tax code, and Title 22, which are two of the top doggone statutes that, if we have to hold over for a special session or whatever is required to rewrite these things in favor of the voter and in favor of the taxpayer, we've got to do. But, elections, and you're right. I mean, elections govern everything, right? Because, really the people who make the laws, they're really the ones who should be writing the bills, not the lobbyists. But these are the guys we're voting for, all the way up, as you guys know, from city council all the way up to the top 5. And people have to have trust in the system, and that's what's missing around the state. And that's the qualitative that in really the only way to fix that is to no kidding somehow get this to where it's back in favor of the folks, to where they can actually trust the system. And that's why we have to be able to audit these, hand audit these things up to 100%, if it comes back to it. But I'm tracking, and I'm familiar with what was going on in Sheridan County, and very familiar with what was going on in all the counties. But when you see, I guess, when you look at Weston in particular, and then, we saw the issues down in Laramie County, and when there's nothing done, when no discipline is really taken there, when folks still have their jobs, then when people around the state see that, they're like, well, wait a minute. What happened to equal application of the law? So, I mean, it's a bigger issue,
Yeah.
Right. It's a bigger issue. And
I got to run here pretty quick, but why don't you go ahead and tell my viewers where you're going to be at if they want to talk to you in person?
Oh, absolutely. Well, today I'm down in Casper. We're going to be tooling around all the state doing, around the city, just meeting a bunch of businesses for St. Patrick's Day. And then tomorrow I'll be heading up to Sheridan, and then I'll be in Buffalo all day on the night. Got several things going. They can always look up my website, brentbn.com, go to the calendar. That's where I'll be. And I tell you, the interaction, the comments, just these conversations I've had with so many people around the state. In fact, I was just down in Carbon County for the last several days, hitting everything from Baggs to Elk Mound to Rollins, all the small towns. And it's been great because a lot of folks aren't listening to them,
Right.
and they do feel that their voice isn't being heard. So yeah, I'll be over in Buffalo for the next couple of days,
Okay, well,
starting
all right, hit me
on the 19th.
hit me up when you're here, and we'll sit down in the studio. Thanks for calling, Brent.
Will
We
do.
got to run, man.
Yeah, thanks, Dave, and thank you, Ken. I appreciate it, brother. And thanks, Jim.
All right, we'll be back in just a second. Cowboy State Politics Live. Back in a bit.